First of all, we'd like to welcome you all. And we will be talking about the KRG elections and its reflections. We will be talking about the elections and the regional reflections, and what it will mean is important. In Iraq and Erbil, first of all, I'd like to extend my gratitude to our panelists. I will be the moderator, and I would like to mention about the overall agenda. And the attendees are, the distinguished panelists are Bilgay Duman, as the Iraq expert, and there will be the background, and the background information will be given. And they will be sharing with us their information. And especially in the parliamentary aspect of it, and what kind of precaution, what kind of reflections, what kind of impact it would have in the region and in Iraq, for Iraq and our relations, and how it would have its reflection in the other parts of the region. And also we have other distinguished panelists. We have Serhat Arkman, Pros and Cons, Security and Risk Analysis Center Director he is, and he will be talking about also in details. And we also have Mehmet Alaca. Now, without further ado, I'd like to leave the floor to Bilgay Duman, and we will have 15 minutes each. If you have questions, please write them down. It's really good to be here, and I'm really happy to be here back in at my home. This is my home, and right now I'm continuing and working in Anadolu Agency as the Anadolu Agency news agency, and certainly here is my home. And I have left Center for Middle Eastern Studies, ORSAM, but it's really good to be here. And as our academic director, Kadir Temiz, has mentioned, in fact, there are 4 observatory personnel here. Therefore, 4 of those 4 distinguished observers are right now with us. Therefore, I'd like to extend my gratitude. And the elections have been delayed for 4 times, and this was planned for earlier. And due to the disruptions and due to the problems between Erbil and Baghdad, there was the delay, and the duration of the term of the parliament was also extended. And in line with the federal court's rule, it was also liquidified. Therefore, the instability in the KRG, as much as we are now talking in this post-US election, it's also in line, because once we take a look at the policy by Trump, and during the previous presidential term, the Kurdish policy in the Middle Eastern region, we know that it's most important, one of the most important components of the U.S. foreign policy, the withdrawal of the American, the withdrawal of the U.S. soldier. And for instance, would they be focusing on KRG? And it also coincides with the Israel clashes, Israel and Palestine clashes, and these Kurdish policy in the region, and we'll be talking about because these have been differentiated, and the elections in KRG, the mainstream parties, we see that the politics are with the PUK, and we have the Quran movement, and we have the referendum process has also turned this really fragmented, and we see the clashes, and the politics here have been quite significant. The problems within the Iraqi Kurdish regional government, and trying to establish a pressure, and this has continued to create a tension, and maybe the federal autonomy would be pressurized. So these would be the rules, and this has also affected the Kurdish regional government. This 111 quota was allocated, and some of them were given the Turkmens, and one was given to the Armenian. However, the central government has ruled that it has also designed its own election system, and these quotas were all demolished. And as a result of this 100 seat of parliamentary, and 5 seats were all renewed, and 2 were given to Turkmens, and in the current system, with the 100 seat of a parliamentary structure is there for the elections. And in line with this, apart from this structural change, a new system could be then mentioned. The election regions were also mentioned, and all the elections were all a single region. The previous elections were at least held that way, but the central government of Iraq, and as a result of the ruling by the court, now they ruled that the region should be Dohuk, Halepce, and Erbil, and Halepce is now being seen as a region with 3 seats within the KRG parliament, but it has a symbolic importance, and the Kurdish Democratic Party, and I think it's quite an important factor, because within the general politics, as far as we know, the Dohuk and Erbil, we know that their weight in different regions, and therefore, regardless of the population in regions, so there is a balance of 2 and 2. These elections, as our colleagues and our professors here will be mentioning about this, and we know that Kurdish Democratic Party and the PUK are separately Kurdish Islamic Union and the other and another Kurdish Islamic movement, and it has been also seen fragmented. And other PUK, for instance, we have seen a Talabani with the People's Front. We have seen that it was Alama Salih's also movement is another separate figure, and we would like to see PUK. We thought that PUK would be impacted. this is quite a fragmented structure, 12 parties, and we have 2 coalitions, and this is a process where, and certainly as observers on the day of the election, casting the votes was seamless and without any problem. For instance, once we see the participation ratios in relation with comparison to the previous elections, the participation was at as high as 72. Earlier, it was around 40%. And the Iraqi Kurdish policy and the social and political base of in Iraq, the Kurdish base over there places a great deal of importance. And the KRG's internal structure and the region, the balance between we have seen some balances. For instance, PUK is trying to consolidate its strength, and the Kurdish Democratic Party is in the first political party, and maybe for the KRG, it's for the very first time that there is an electronic voting system, so electronic ballot system. And this electronic voting, everyone has a biometric card. You have your fingerprint and biometric card, and your fingerprints are all matched in a device. And my colleague, my professor here was defined and described quite well. And it's like your compass and your address are matched. This is to prevent any double voting. So everyone has their own card, and your ID will be matching with the casting vote is assigned to your name. So it's quite easy to clearly see whom casts the vote for what party. But we thought that it would be easy to identify that. We know that it's easy to identify who votes for whom, although they said that this was not possible. And in the KRG system, we see that it's continuing. 4 times there was the delay and there was the tension, and it was quite important in terms of the establishment, along with the US elections and withdrawal of US from Middle Eastern countries, and especially Iraq, and Trump's policy. And all these play great role in the stability of the country. Kirkuk, Turkmens, and Turkey, and relations between Turkey and KRG, and the Iraqi central government's relations with Turkey and Turkey's relation with them. And we also had the opportunity to discuss these earlier, and what kind of impacts these will bring. We will have the opportunity to see them. Thank you so much for giving me the floor. Thank you. Now we will have a deeper dive into these topics, but I must emphasize 2 more topics. First one is in order to increase the state's capacity, there is a awareness the system and the expectations are to be discussed here in details. we have been there to observe, and we haven't seen much problem. The corporate structure we know that there are some very interesting results. Now I'd like to give the floor to Mr. Mehmet. I'd like to thank you for this invitation, and I had the opportunity to speak with Mr. Bilgay Duman, and it's a great honor for me to be here. And we're also working together with him in Anadolu Agency. Thank you for having me. And the background is set here. As you have said, in fact, the election results this is shown, as you see, with the 100 seats, Kurdish Democratic Party, and with the quota seats, 67 seats were received. These two strong political parties is controlling 2/3 of the entirety. And following the elections, the statu quo may continue. There's the ideological context, and the two political parties have the historical competition and rivalry. And the two political parties have the resources, and it's about the distribution, the success of the distribution of the sources and resources. And the KRG, although the democratic culture was consolidated, we see the, for instance, the weapon, whomever holds the weapon is seen to be stronger in the region. And the public also goes for the definition of that strength. And despite the young population's will for change, the division in between, division of the or distribution of power in between these two political parties is obvious. Also, the Islamic parties, these are included. Once they're included in this traditional political parties, and the Yekurti and Pamal and the sorry, I said 67. In four political parties will have 2/3 of these. In fact, it's 77, right? It's not even 2/3. It's third, 3/4 of the. So the two political parties statu quo will continue, and for the distribution of the policy of the sources will be the locomotive. And the traditional politics is very strong. Konal and Yakurti and the Islamic parties are quite strong. The transition of the votes is between with the other political party is not that intensive. They have some between but between 15 seats, there is an engagement in between the two parties. What attracts my attention here is this two political parties statu quo will continue, and the traditional politics methods, the traditional politics will continue. But apart from this 77 seats, there is the opposition field for the 23 seats. In 2009, Goran movement has left the PUK, and they have been quite active in 2013, and it could be an alternative power to the other political parties under the control of Talabani and Barzani. So it could be a new political party, and we have witnessed, certainly there is the military structure, but the political structure, because they have announced themselves as an alternative to the wrongdoings of others. And everyone was sort of in a kind of a hope. But this hope did not last long. These two political parties, Statiko, and in the last 10 years in the Kurdish region, the opposition field was narrowed down. And the previous election and the Goran movement has diminished. Instead, this was replaced by the new generation movement. And one of the most surprising movement of this new generation movement, and it's Süleymaniye-based movement, they have increased their seats up to 15. It's not only Süleymaniye-centered, but also even in Duhok, where KDP, Kurdish Democratic Party, is strong, they have received a lot votes. And in Süleymaniye, they have increased their strength, and almost in the last 50 years, PUK has received 400,000 votes, and this new generation political party is an election movement. It has its base, other than its leader. And this is about almost like it emerged during and based on the need. It was an ad hoc establishment. In Erbil, one of the representatives of the new generation movement was there, and we had the opportunity to meet with them. And we asked the question on how they defined their success and how they made this. They mentioned about the fact that there would be the electricity outages, and whenever there is water and electricity outage, they would be distributing water and generators for electricity generator machines whenever there is electricity outage, which brought them a total number of 300,000 votes. So Goran movement with its 25 deputies has disappeared, and this was replaced by new generation, and it has doubled its votes, and has mentioned. And there was the Bafel Talabani that was pushed out of PUK, Lahore Lake Jengi, their cousins, and there is the other front, and it also fell behind the expectations. And the analysts actually waited for them to be strong, and the expectations were not met. And Ali Hamasalih did not meet the expectations either, with 4 votes. And there are, in fact, in total, they have achieved to have 23 votes. And the scattered around picture, it's also preventing the mobilization in KRG. So these two big or strong political parties have a lot of manipulative tools tools to manipulate others, and the fragmented structure of the opposition and the politics that's out of touch with reality is not finding any response either. And the new movement party, although it's not very structured, it's a movement, it still is getting stronger and is being welcomed by the society because of the void of a regular solution. And the society then withdraws. Lahur Talabani, in fact, was launched as an alternative to PUK, but because of its relations, the opposition circle has kept a distance from Cihangir. That's why the opposition has caught some sort of a solution, but it's quite a hopeless case. Other than the opposition, this is the collapse of the traditional policy, and there is the minorities. In October 12, this was reduced down to 5. And everyone knows, whomever is focusing on Iraq, both in Baghdad, in Kurdistan parliamentary, the minority quotas are under the hegemony of others. For instance, they have in Baghdad parliamentary, there is 9 minority quota, and they only have the function of raising their hands. These quotas are given the function of raising their hands only. And in KRG, this 11 quota was written for the Kurdish Democratic Party. And they could reach a level where they could be strong enough as to set up a government on their own. But the minority number was reduced down to 5, and this harmed KDP, Kurdish Democratic Party. And the image of KDP, Kurdish Democratic Party, as the protector of the minorities was also harmed. So when 11 quota was in the given to the government in office, now this was reduced down, and it was divided in between the 2 parties, and that's much more fragmented. And that's why both for Turkmens, the Turkmens were also harmed. The 5 representatives were reduced down to 2, and this was also divided in between the rivalry actors. And Mr. Bilgay and Mr. Sarkan will also Hashabi for the first time. They were also introduced to Hashabi, was also in the quota of KRG. The Hashabi is the executive power, and Hashabi in the last previous local elections in Kirkuk, they have had one of their representatives in the provincial representative council, and as a result of some politics, another actor close to Hashabi, they were in the Kirkuk council. And this is in Süleymaniye, one of the Christian quotas. Hashabi has undergone some very intensive problems with KDP, and that's an actor as such, and this is quite concerning from the viewpoint of KDP. From the discourses and from the security point of view, because KDP, for the non-Muslims, whenever they have a policy and discourse for the sake of non-Muslims, another Babylon movement that's against all these. And this can be an actor to criticize them on behalf of Hashabi. But the Turkmen quota is relatively close to Hashabi. All these democratic the political parties KDP and PUK are in need of one another. They will not be part of one another, and the two dual statu quo and sharing all these there are many different dynamics, and we do not know as to how this will continue. It will be centering, it will be a government with the KDP and PUK, and it has, from the viewpoint of KDP, to reach 11 is not that difficult. By means of convincing or by means of even buying these seats, they can set up and they can establish a government. We have witnessed this quite closely. And they need to be engaged in kind of an effort with PUK. The Kurdish region and their status has been harmed. And their relations in Iran will be strengthened. And KDP certainly does not want this. And the national unity is also desired by KDP, where all actors are represented. And majority of the opposition is not welcoming this, especially after the Iraqi elections, the government to be established, because following the elections, it has never been on time. For instance, it has taken 10 months or 8 months. It has always taken a lot of months following the elections. The Kirkuk issue will be the context here, and Iraqi presidential presidency will be another context. The strategic alliance and the dual strategic alliance is this. Regardless of whatever the votes, the government and the power will be shared. But this wasn't And the UK says that they are receiving two-folds of the votes, and they do not want to share this. And strategic alliance does not seem to be on the agenda. And the projection here, I would like to leave it here without making an estimation. Baghdad, Tehran, and Ankara will be discussed by our professors more. Thank you. In fact, I didn't want to interrupt you. And certainly we need to talk about Washington as well. Thank you so much for having me. We had the opportunity to observe and it was really a good time for all of us, and we had good time. Well, you may ask as to why we had good time. It's about having this observation. And I'd like to extend my gratitude to Mehmet and Bilgay and our director. Now I will make a deep analysis. If I may remind a few points. The first reminder will be connected to the final analysis. The election, not the election itself, but the government's fate was actually ruled in the court. And the establishment of this government may be seen in the court of Iraqi Federal Court. Certainly there wasn't any irregularity. But we have seen imbalances. As our colleague has stated, if there is a lot of Christians there, it needs to be visited by the Pope. Majority of Erbil, so there was Christians elected from a region where there was no Christian, and there wasn't any Turkmen in the region where Erbil has the quota. So KDP has increased 140 seats, but the PUK has gained seats with a certain amount of votes. It's about the election system. And even prior to the election itself, with regards to the election results or the post-election political dynamics, I'm sure there will be the scenarios, and they knew about the direction. In Erbil and Halepce and in Süleymaniye, we know that these have been watched closely. Baghdad, this election has been intervening without any improper means. The political system, starting as of 2013, the central government and the federal region, there was a balance. But with this, the balance was disturbed. Baghdad and the central government and this developments the Iraqi High Board of Elections, the number of the seats will change, the quotas will be reviewed, because the next parliamentary we know that all these election results will have a reflection on a number of discussions. In connection with these, as Mehmet has stated, the opposition is receiving exactly the same votes, but the votes are divided in the political parties. I think we were in military service. That's why you were not able to come. And the next election, they received 24 seats. So where did these go? These all were distributed to the new generation movement. In fact, there are 3 political parties. One of them is this, regardless of the seats, even if it's 5 seats, it's the PUK and KDP and the other ideological parties. The third one is regional leadership movements. Mustafa, Shahsuar Abdulrahim, Lemurşeh Çebi. There are 3 categories. And the third category are the ones rendering and considering themselves and opposition. And the others are always part of the government. This order here shows us in the macro economics lecture. There was the 72 participation in the Iraqi elections. It's only calculated on the valid votes. But if in fact it's the regional, it's the overall, the general participation is much lower. All these figures go somewhere else. And how this will be shared and how these will be, it's not like the political parties are deciding. Whomever has the impact and influence on Baghdad, for instance, the USA, Iran, Turkey, they have impact and influence in Iraq. And it's probable that we will see Russians being also an influence, especially certain sectors, through different sectors that are being influential on the Iraqi elections. There is a power struggle between KDP and the PUK. It was back in the previous years. Goran has left, and in fact, throughout these election processes, the federal system, or in the federal countries, this is the process that we see in federal countries. Whenever there is a central government is strong, that's the center of attraction. And the other parts are weakened. So what they've done, what have they done this through? They have done this through the courts. Because there are some gaps and voids in the constitution, and the election law has so. And what you see there is, in fact, if the governments want to intervene to the KRG, it's not by means of having talks with the representatives of the political parties. They've seen that they can solve this through Baghdad. The local politics dynamics for these to be understood, it's the other states, it's in proportion with how the other states approach. That's why Iraqi elections are important. The new government to emerge will give harm to the federal region or just the contrary, depending on the local results. 2025 in Iraq, if it's possible, in Iraqi in 2005 can be quite complicated. The external dynamics as well, one of which is U.S. presidential elections. Certainly, Russia and U.S., the disputes or the agreements, for instance, Ukraine and other regions where U.S. and Russia will have a dispute or agreement in the, for instance, Eastern, this will directly influence Iraq, and Eastern Mediterranean developments will also impact Iraq, and Israel and Iran and their proxies clashes in 2025. This will be felt deeply in Iraq. And also, I think we will be feeling the impact much more than in Syria. In Syria, every 3 to 5 days, we see Israel and America groups, they attack Iranians. It's not making into the news. However, whenever there is Iraq involved, it becomes part of the government. So there is the pressure from Israel and America on the other proxies of Iraq. Israel and U.S. on the other hand, Iran is on the other hand, and they will have impact on the Iraqi dynamics. Whether these will have its reflections on the elections or not, will these cause the elections to be postponed? We don't know, but Iraqi state systematic, probably we will see all of these, an influence of all of these in 2025. And Iran will ask the U.S. to withdraw completely, and they have this agreement with Iraqi government. They will have the opposition troops to the north, and there isn't any agreement. So this is a framework agreement. At the time of Obama, there was the framework agreement, and then the content was filled in. Right now, the technical details of such agreements will make us think. It's when you come up with bad scenarios that you listen to more carefully. That's why I will be telling you more on the pessimistic scenarios. For instance, in Balkans, in the Southeastern Asia, we have seen this happening quite in history. And U.S. is drawing a line, and by means of keeping itself present in Erbil, and they have this withdrawal. They withdraw. It's another question whether they should withdraw or not, or during the withdrawal process there will be other issues. political, military presence of a state can be summarized by drawing its own line, and we're talking about the defragmentation of the state, deunifying of the state. And the elections may somehow lead to these, to the central and the federal governments, and how they were having an argument on these. And in 2022, they felt the central government felt itself quite strong, and there was the withdrawal from Mosul. This tells us another dispute and clashes dynamic. From the viewpoint of Turkey, what we really want is to see stability as much as possible in Iraq, because we have a big strategic project, and we have such a roadmap. We need stability at minimum. And minimum amount. And in the line where there is the road, you need to be ensuring there will be investments for the construction and millions and billions of US dollar. It's not only about money. The cultural and political stability is also important. So we need to see this is not really something we would like to see. We really would like to see stability in the region because of the projects that we have in Iraq, because there are so many other projects there. It's not an easy situation, and we have many other and we have and without the need for the government or PKK's presence in Iraq, it's not only in the northern mountainous area, it's not limited to the mountainous region, and in fact, in the other it could be even more. In fact, it's Kirkuk. In fact, Süleymaniye. It's right south of Assos. Certainly, we wouldn't like to see any clashes here. We would like to see stability. In Iran, the number of the seats is as low as 39. And it's 42%. And it's 54. So the new generation will accept if prime minister is given to them. Thank you for these. There are two questions in my mind. There are 4 regions, and for the very first time, there is this Halepce, Süleymaniye. There are some statistics in our hands, and KDP is well above 70%. And Kurdish policy, where is it going, and what kind of politics is it on the horizon? Maybe we can start with the question. Once we take a look at the major plan, in the last 15 years, there really isn't much of a change. Engine power is the KDP, and in the elections of 2018, in the new generation, they usually have a secular image, but they have their own prayers as well. But they have, like in Dohok, they have pulled towards themselves the Islamic movement. In Süleymaniye, the population there is quite a scattered around one. Lahore, Talabani, they are normally strong. Lahore, Talabani. Lahore, in my point of view, Süleymaniye is more like Izmir, or in terms of its and it's usually Süleymaniye because of the ideological support for PKK. So strategically and from an ideological point of view, this yellow or green region in Dohuk and Halepçe and Süleymaniye, the colors over there are undergoing some changes. The new generation movement, for instance, in Süleymaniye, the opposition there is a more secular, in more Kurdistani but PUK is more secular, more leftist. The sociological structure of these parties in KRG, is there a change in the trend? These traditional parties are preserving their structure, but the new generation movement, it's not an ideological movement, it's a personal movement, just like in the one, as in Goran, it's based on, it's a movement where a personal strength or power is gained or lost. There isn't an ideological presence there, but in Goran, it's not the case. That was much more organized. And 37 of the votes and KDP is not divided. Is there any sociological meaning to this? It's much more organized. PUK, we see tribes. Much more traditional, and this organizational structure is preserved in PUK. Bafal Talabani. Bafal is leader-centered, and Mesut Barzani is the fact that they have targeted Mesut Barzani. Maybe we can receive the questions. 2,800,000 voters were there. So if they calculate the figures, that's not even as high as these numbers. 10% invalid votes. So there was the invalid votes as well. We have identified the voters who did not even have their. So it was already 1 o'clock at noon. The percentage, it was 10% of those voters who couldn't vote because of their fingerprint related challenges. So there are many losses as such. As Professor Sarhat has mentioned, and this will be the federal court's rulings also reflect important points. So as a comment and as a question, the Kurdish region politics will increase its impact on Iran policy. Also, the new generation seems as the winner of this politics because it attracts the opposition votes. And maybe Mr. Mehmet Alaca can answer this. And we have KYB, which is in fact PUK, is the Kurdish Patriot Union of the Kurdish Patriots, the PUK. Are they the new winners then? Is it possible to say that PUK is the second winner? For instance, in Iran, under the context of Ankara and Iran rivalry, what do you mean? What do you see these? How do you see these elections? In fact, the election results, Iran's using this federal court. This is where they have started benefiting from these. The second one is they have opened the gate. They don't have the constitution. The KRG does not have the constitution. So there are the voids and lacking points in these election law. And these were all the federal court in the region. The minute that they accept to determine the regional election parliamentary constitution ambiguity will be only addressed by the federal court. Because it was controlled by Iran. And starting from today, they started determining and impacting the political dynamics. It's about the budget pressures, the economic pressures as well. In fact, it was one of the most important tools. In fact, the economic and the failure to pay for the salaries caused the KDP to come to prepare its own end in Turkey and between Iran. It's not only Erbil, Süleymaniye. We have other points, Kirkuk, Mosul. The most important one is also in the newspapers usually have exclusive titles. And they have a total number of higher numbers, 180, and the number of the seats for PUKs has increased from 21 to 23. But KDP, starting as of 2009, it's undertaking a lot of things, and there are many economic and social and democratic challenges and problems. And majority of the people are all worn out. They're exhausted. And they have manipulated the election constitution. They changed the ballots, voting ballots. It's in fact KDP. If they can still continue preserving their status, this means that this goes to mean that they are strong. PUK has its own strength, but it's well below the expectations. the Baghdad's roles has been suffered by KDP in Erbil, and it has certainly the votes has decreased down, the number of the seats has declined, but the mathematical and arithmetics of the parliament has reduced down. It's 42%, and it's still 42%. But it owes more to PUK. It's only because of the external powers. And the Kurdish region statiko KDP in Kirkuk has stood somewhere else. And certainly they will pay, and they will be bearing the consequences. Ideologically, they do not want this. They certainly need to compromise to PUK, but I agree with. And the winner here is absolutely KDP. The Kurdish Democratic Party is the absolute winner. Turkmens were given 5 quotas, and this was reduced down to 2. And Iraqi Kurtmens, the representatives' capability for the very first time in the KRG, other than the quota. The Turkmen presence the quota they have received Peshmerga's votes from Soran region. And the quota seats in both Erbil but in Iraq Turkmen front, on behalf of the Turkmens, we see that they're not sociological. And because you see Turkmens, these sociological existence and under the Iraqi policy, the KRG from the viewpoint of Turkmens, under the leadership of PUK and this establishing the government between the KDP and PUK, and maybe it's better to see how the presence how the presence of KDP will be perceived by PUK. Thank you so much. If we can have the Q&A, if there is any question, we're ready to receive your questions. Hello, my name is Recep. I'm having my doctorate ship here. Bilgay Hocam, Mr. Bilgay. The new election system and the processes, how did this affect the process? Were the parties able to adapt to these? And was there any party to adapt to have to enjoy the advantages of this? And in the KRG, and in the next processes, it's not only about the distribution to the regions, about the seats, about even if PUK benefited from the this advantage, and we have also seen that KDP was not pressured, and the new generation movement has benefited from this. The amount of the votes there are many different calculation strategies. The number of the seats is seen as calculated. In these two strong political parties preserve their status, their powers, and the opposition and they couldn't even reach 25%. In fact, this is a very weak result for the opposition. These two government political parties hold all the economic resources. They are military and intelligence sources, and they hold them. This means that there are many civil servants. regardless of the new generation movement has reduced down and they will have the consolidation. And their secular sentiment is now blooming in the form of a transformation. However, this is very much in line and parallel to the employment expectation. As much as they criticize the order, certainly they are in a position to support the structure so that it's improved, so that employment can be secured for the young generation. Thank you. Thank you so much. There are 4 and the election system was explained by Mr. Bilgay. The election system is not we have seen indicators that the election system is not fair. And the second is there is a change dynamic in the Kurdish politics. And we see the influence of the political party in the and as a last point, we can say that probably change is needed. Thank you so much for your participation.